So if you looked at the title of that article, it introduced this word description. And then we've been talking about interpretation. And then we've also been talking about reading. And then, of course, there have been different kinds of reading. We've had different versions of reading. Okay, with the fortune cookie. So it turns out that, yeah, etymologically, it's called a cookie on the internet because it used to be when people used to write in Unix code, they had something they called a magic, let's say, package or cookie, and it was based on the idea of a fortune cookie. So it's the notion of you have an item, you have a thing, an object, a cookie, and you break it open, and inside there's some magic message. Usually that tells the future, although it may. Well, that is very. I mean, the fortune cookie. Then, like, what model of reading is that? I mean, it's the cookie the text, and then you break it open. So this is like the depth model. You break the cookie open, and then there's the and then sort of like the sort of interpretive. I don't know, the excavation model of hermeneutics. You pull the answer out of the cookie or something like that. Although, interestingly, in that model, the fortune has nothing to do with the cookie. It's not the meaning of the cookie. The cookie, typically fortune cookies don't taste that great anyway. But yeah, the riddle will be about, you will meet some important person, or you will have good luck at backgammon. It's not, it's nothing to do with, there's a weird disjunction between the meaning of the cookie or the meaning of the message is totally unrelated to the cookie. So it's sort of, we were talking about like containers and forms. It's sort of like, imagine something inside a container, but the container has no bearing on the meaning of the message. It's almost anti-hermeneutic or something like that. We can maybe talk about this more later, but this word description partly comes from anthropology, and it's specifically opposed to interpretation. So you are an anthropologist and you go to, I don't know, the United States to study primitive culture, and you are not supposed to, according to this model, you're not supposed to ask what various things mean. In the first instance at least, you're supposed to simply describe. And the goal is try to imagine, it's almost like a pure gaze, like no interpretation, just describe. And you could ask whether or not that's possible. Okay, there's a strong argument that that's impossible, that just insofar as you're selecting. I mean, the ideal, whatever, so you go to the United States and you go to watch a wrestling match. And you don't explain the meaning of it or whatever like Bart did. You simply describe. And in the fantasy, you would be sort of like infinitely detailed, your explanation. You would just describe everything so that you could not be accused of privileging one part over another. Right? Because if I go to the wrestling match and I only describe parts 1, 2, and 3, but not 4, I am by default interpreting. I'm saying parts 1, 2, and 3 are more important than 4. Or if I spend more time describing part 2 than parts 1 and 3, I am interpreting because I'm saying part 2 is more. I'm making assumptions. So the idea, the pure fantasy model of description, you would just describe everything without any judgment. And you would suspend judgment. You have all sorts of, you would just describe. This is related, there's different versions of this. It's related to a certain move in sort of sociology to try to talk about people more as if they were things. So in other words, instead of trying to talk about people as though they were like the surface full of bundles of ideas and information and notions and ambitions and whatever, again, you would just describe the surface or something like that. And the idea is that this will somehow give you access to certain things about human beings or society that you might not otherwise notice. Okay, so these are the claims. Just put those out there as thoughts. Again, they're ideals. Of course, it's impossible to do these things in their purest form. But you could ask if they're useful. Now, one example I like in the surface reading text we look at today is on page 12 in this representations article. And the example is to do with Victorian English novels. And this is what this critic Sharon Marcus has argued. And so the example is female friendship. So when people read Victorian novels, there's this trend in the scholarship to say female friendships are kind of cover stories for erotic desire that can't be somehow made explicit given the culture of 19th century Britain or something like that. But in these novels tend to end in marriage. And critics assume, therefore, well, marriage must negate the lesbian desire. Therefore, these female friendships ultimately are kind of on the margins. They're not at the center of the story. And what Marcus argued, she came along in this book and she argued, if you actually look at the novels, these female friendships are at the center throughout. In other words, there was a very basic way in which the critics were literally just not seeing what was going on in the story because they'd made a whole set of assumptions about A, what female friendship meant, and B, what it means that the novels end in marriage. And so it led to a situation where they were making these elaborate interpretive gestures, not realizing that in the process they thereby were basically ignoring the facts, as it were. Right? So they come up with this thing of, oh, you see, female friendship is marginalized in the novel. And Marcus came and looked, and so in other words, she came and she said, let's just describe the place of female friendship in the novel, and you'll see that it's actually very, very central. So in other words, this is an example of where, at least according to her argument, go read the novels and decide for yourself, but her argument was interpretation here was, as it were, obscuring, just describing what was actually going on. So interpretation was leading to some very skewed perspectives on the contents of the novel. And that's her example of saying where, no, let's just go and just try to read at the surface. Don't assume what female friendship means. Don't assume what its implications are for other plots. Just describe it. So that would be, again, it's a sort of an artificial example, but that's an example of where interpretation is potentially, it has weird effects that even go back to the level of just what you notice on the factual level. Right? Sometimes we tend to think what we do is what we're very systematic. We first describe and then we interpret. What she's saying is, no. You're always already interpreting, and your interpretations are going to wildly influence how you see it in the first place. Right? So again, that goes back to Jameson, right? Jameson saying, you never have this pure, direct gaze on the text. And that's what she's sort of arguing here. Another thing you might think about is the difference between reading and interpretation. So for example, in that Demon essay we read about the Proust, Demon is doing a reading of Proust. And what that seems to mean in that instance is identifying the relationship between literal and metaphorical dynamics, and then identifying how the text comments on the relationship between literal and metaphorical dynamics in the text. And then potentially taking those observations and using them to discuss larger motifs in the novel. But it all starts with relation to the literal and the figurative, and then how the text relates to the relationship, or how the story relates to the relation to the literal and figurative. That's very different than a lot of interpretations of the novel. Right, and something that would say, well, this novel is about the decline of the ideal of memory at the turn of the 20th century, or this novel is about the rise of scientism in the face of industrial reality. Those would be interpretations. For Demon, the reading has a very specific technical feature. Now, the reading can, of course, be in support of interpretation. But it's certainly the suggestion in Demon that a lot of people will do interpretations without ever doing the reading part, and that's a problem. Now, one accusation that people often make to Demon is they say the problem with Demon is it's always the same answer. Like, in other words, all his readings of all the texts end up with similar punchlines. Again, that's an accusation. They end up with similar punchlines about the allegorical nature of all language. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Again, that's a version of the formalism. In other words, some people would say Demon's version of reading is just a kind of fancy, it's a fancy formalism. That's something to consider as a possibility. Okay, let's hear another, oh, I don't know if we're done with cookies. Let us ask this question. Let us interpret the meaning of analyzing the status of cookie the sugar baked item / cookie the internet friend by way of writing a poem about them. Can anyone comment on that as an interpretive move? We won't ask the author of the poet, right? We're not interested in the author's intention. We can ask later just for kicks, but what the intention was, if she knows. But why? What is the, or what's interesting about the gesture of commenting on this phenomenon of cookies through a poem?
We're not psychoanalyzing.
No, we're not psychoanalyzing. I'm certainly not psychoanalyzing. I don't know a single thing about her personal existence. I couldn't tell you the first thing. We're not psychoanalyzing. We're just asking about the gesture, or about the specific poem, about the text. I mean, what does it do? So wait, why is this not coming back?
You need to turn on the project.
Oh. But if it's not on the screen, I don't know.
You take them.
Even from the laptop?
It takes some time to.
Yeah, no, I know. Anyway, yeah, what does using the poem allow for? Because people do all sorts of interesting ways of interpreting things. They write all sorts of stuff. But what's the effect of doing it in poem form? Poem complemented by some images. We had Cookie Monster, we had cookies.
In the particular poem, she connected, her personal experience of having had cookies with the course, as consumers using the browser. So maybe she wanted to comment about the cultural issue, cultural thing. More personally, as a student, perspective of a student who are studying literature and who especially want to focus on technology, literary texts. So that seems to be just literary presentation of her wish of, yeah.
But this doesn't have the quality of like an actual personal revelation. Right? You don't really, this is not a confessional text, forgive me, I stole the cookies, right? From the first lines, it has a certain kind of cartoon aspect to it, yes? It's playful.
Yes.
That's probably what I'm getting at. Like, start out with Christmas cookies, chocolate chip cookies. It's too bad you don't have ovens in Korea. I can bake you. Come to America, I'll bake you. I'm really, really, really good at baking chocolate chip cookies. I say that with 3 reallys, like, wow, I'm not afraid, I'll actually meet that billing. So yeah, if you come to the United States, I'll bake you some cookies. So you begin with something sort of lighthearted, and then the poem kind of extends that. But it's not all a joke. Cookies of both types are a serious matter. In fact, at the end, it ends with a kind of ominous it's a cautionary tale. It's like, what it's sort of saying is, like, when you break the thing open and you find the secret inside, don't take it lightly. It's like the moral of the story is like, cookies are not a laughing matter. But it's all pitched in a very lighthearted way. So it's light touch, right? It's like, these happy cookies, cookie monster. Beware. Beware the prophecies of the future.
It's like a parable for children.
It's absolutely a parable. That's very nice. It's an allegory, right? In a sense, what she's done is she's taken this very indirect form. You know, I mean, that's what a parable is. It's literally parabolic. It's literally like, it's a very indirect form. But what's the moral of the story then? Should you go to more websites or less? Should you eat more cookies or less? Did you read more fortune cookies or less?
I think that's a rather rhetorical question.
You don't think there is a single moral? Or is that part of the idea, is it's kind of uncertain?
It's uncertain to me.
Well, but that in itself is interesting, right? Because that's very different from a fortune cookie. You open a fortune cookie and it has a vague message. It's not ambiguous. I mean, it can be vague, but it's not like there's, I mean, one time actually, I went to go grab a fortune cookie and there were 2 fortunes inside. And I was like, oh my gosh, this whole thing is invalidated for me for the rest of my life. I no longer will listen to anyone's superstition about, oh, I got this and that fortune. I'm like, no, I got a cookie with 2. It just showed, it was the glitch, right? It was like the person slipped during the dance. I was like, you just ruined the whole thing. I don't believe in that. And then it happened twice. That was then I got worried. But anyway, the fortune cookie is the model. If you break it open and there's one message. But here, you're saying, at the end of the poem, we don't actually get to break the poem open and get a message. So allegorically, it's the allegory of the fortune cookie does not itself culminate in a single fortune, as it were. Another thing we can analyze culturally. Anybody? Anyone have something good to share?
I'm not sure if it's good, but I have an image.
All right.
I'm going to just show it.
Yes.
It's an ad.
You don't want to put it up here. Is it too hard to put it up here?
It's actually very obvious, but I'll make it easier.
Yeah. So many rings.
Oh, it doesn't have the one I want.
You ring ad? Vintage jewelry and watch ads. Tiffany and Company. What is Tiffany and Company as a cultural, I mean, I know it is, but how would we characterize it as an establishment? It's a jeweler, yeah. It's a jeweler, but what? High end, low end? Extremely high end to the point of like maybe a little gaudy. That'd be fair. Here it's like good taste. I mean, in the US it's supposed to be good taste too. It's a little. I mean, it's very expensive. It's like if you were the kind of person who expected a ring from Tiffany, oh, it's Christmas, of course I'll get a ring. Like you're expecting a lot. It's more expensive. It's more expensive than cookies. All right. So what does the ad say? Or what is the ad? Tell us why you picked it.
it invokes so many fantasies related to the losing the orange.
Uh-huh.
And also, is that the robin's egg blue. That color is just, it's one of my favorite colors.
So what does it say? It says, some days matter. I can't actually even read it. Something the engagement ring in the whatever, something the pleasure for, can you read it?
I can't really read it either.
It's like a reproduction, so yeah, you can't actually read what it says. Maybe you can. No. All right, so what you like about it is it invokes fantasies about receiving a ring, and a ring that would have a lot of significance. The color is very striking. What else?
I think it's interesting because the ring is for women and the box is holding the man's hands.
Okay, so as you say, it's clearly about it's kind of like an act between the genders. You know, it's clearly a male hand is giving a woman's ring in this box. And again, it's a little like the fortune cookie. No, what I like about these, they're all like these boxes, these secret things, and you open, I mean, we're talking about, hermeneutics, right, and surface reading, and it's like, no, here it's like, open the box, oh, there's the ring. Now, in a funny way, what if you took away, what if you just took away that part? I can't, that's on my hand. I can't stop the projector. What if you took away the ring image and it just had the box with the hand and Tiffany Company? How would it be different?
But because of that Tiffany logo, we assume that a ring is inside a box.
Oh yeah, sure. It says Tiffany Company. We know. Yeah. So why do they have the ring there at all?
If you hide the ring, we don't know if it's necklace or watch or.
I don't think so. I think it's very specific as a wedding ring.
Yeah.
You think the box is
Yes,
specific?
the box, the size of it.
Yeah, a necklace would be in a bigger box. And a watch would be in a thinner box. They put a watch in a longer box. So the box is, I think the box, it could be earrings maybe. But yeah, it would still be.
I feel like without the ring, superficially you can say how many carats is he going to give me. Because this is, I feel like the size of the size of the ring and how much it would be worth is also very important because, like, roughly seeing, I'm guessing that ring is about what, like 3 carats. It's probably more than one, so already.
It's a lot.
Like, so ideas of consumer.
I don't know anything
but
about
also
diamonds.
luxury items.
My knowledge of diamonds is 0. You've already like far exceeded like 1 carat. I don't know.
I think that's more than 1 carat. Many people.
So it's really expensive.
It's probably about 3 carats. Yeah.
Actually, it's really important to Korean bride. How
How-
many carats? Yeah.
So how much is a 3? So what's good? 3 carats
Usually, I think usually 1 carat, right?
is good. How much is a 3 carat ring? How much is a 3 carat ring?
We have to Google that, right? What's the real price of diamond today?
I know the rough price of a 1 carat.
What's a 1 carat?
It varies in accordance with the quality.
Yeah.
About
It varies a lot,
$10,000.
actually.
$10,000 for 1 carat or 3 carats?
1 carat.
So 3 carats is, what's the? See, now we're finally learning something substantive in this class. The price is, hey, why did you learn that reading class? I don't know, but diamonds are expensive. Man, who knew? 3 carat, how much is a 3 carat ring? Now we need this. This is hermeneutics. No, this is not even that. This is description. I don't know what it is. This is give us the facts.
It varies dramatically.
Like quality, I'm sure, yeah. Well, they also make artificial diamonds now that weren't mined. That way you don't have to feel guilty about the horrible civil wars and slavery in Africa that led to the diamond production. $10,000. Well, but this is good. This is good. What is a wedding ring? What kind of signifier is it?
Bond of a couple, a married couple.
Okay. It's supposed to show, the ring on your finger is supposed to show some kind of connection between you and another person. It's given, and I do like the way this is all about hand giving. It's like you give something that will be a sign of the connection. But of course, I mean, this ad, and because it's Tiffany, I mean, this ad is all, at the same time, is about a certain kind of opulence, right? I mean, it's about expense. You know, this is not like you hand your beloved a flower, or you hand them a little poem you wrote about cookies. Darling, I wrote you a poem about chocolate chip cookies. It's about like real, you know, sort of material outlay or something like that. But it's also about legibility. In other words, the ring, and I mean what you said is important about in Korean society, like everyone who should be able to know will know, oh, that's a 3-carat ring you have, not a 2-carat ring or a 1-carat ring. Right? You'll wear the ring to display, and those in the know, those who can read the code, will know what the code means. Those who don't know the code, it doesn't mean you don't care what they think. Right? So your bozo brother who doesn't know like the difference between 1 and 3-carat ring, you don't really care. It's not for him to know. Right? So it's a demonstration. It's like this is ostentatious wealth in a certain way. But it's wealth. It's an ostentatious display of wealth, but it's wealth bound up with a display of partnership, a display of being paired off, a display of being of togetherness or something like that. So it's a weird intersection of the fiduciary, of money and of love, or whatever you want to say, of partnership. Right? It's a weird, they sort of align very strangely. But in a scenario where it's all about, it needs to be legible. Right? There needs to be a code. It needs to, if you're going to pay the extra, we don't know how much, for the 3 carats, you better sure have that people can register the difference between the 1 carat and the 3 carat.
I think the significance that it's a marriage ring, that marriage ring, you probably will have it on until your spouse dies or you get divorced or something, and it takes it will be with you for a long time. It's like emphasizing the fact that if you want your marriage ring and you want it to be showy or you want it to be something exclusively privileged or something, why not Tiffany & Co?
So why not go all out?
Yes.
Although the flip side of that, of course, is you are committing yourself to a life of ostentation, of ostentatious display of wealth. So it's not like, it's like 5 years from now on a Tuesday, when you're like, oh, I'm going to go to yoga class, I'm just going to wear my old sweatpants and my ugly shoes, I'm not going to wear my fancy outfit. It doesn't matter. If you're still wearing the ring, it's still, wow, you're rich. Or as a friend of mine once said, we were at some restaurant in New York, and he pointed to some people at the bar, and he said, I don't know if those people are rich now, but they were rich when they got dressed this morning. They were wearing so much, it's expensive what they were wearing, it's unbelievable. He's like, at least this morning they're rich, maybe they're no longer rich. But yeah, so it's like you can't, and that would even lead to a certain kind of, sort of wealth chic or something like that, where you could be dressed in all casual clothes, but the ring would still somehow indicate, oh, but underlying, at least whenever it was given to you, there was something. So you're kind of committing to the display in a funny way. You can't like take the diamond off on days when you want to be low key or something like that.
And I think it is very interesting that there is only one ring in the advertisements, because the wedding is the a relationship between two individuals, but there's only one ring, which is supposed to given to a woman because a man is holding it.
Right.
So,
So there's a certain kind of asymmetry there.
yeah.
Why is the ring shot such that you get the reflection of the ring? There is a second ring, but it's just the shadow. You get the shadow of that one. Why is it shot like that? Clearly, that was not by chance. They did that as, infinitely precise. Why? You get the ring and the ghost.
It shows more ethereal feeling that it's not that very critical material object than some simple,
Okay,
some ethereal,
okay,
some very
Okay.
valuable.
So you start to see, the people who make these ads, they've all read Bart and, no, I'm serious. I know people in ad. They've all read the same theory text you have, right? They're not. They all went to the same universities, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, I think that's a great point. It's in some sense, what you're seeing is an image of the relationship between the material object and the ideal object. And you're seeing, it's literally being sketched out, the idea of the ring, the circle, the stone on it, indeterminate, but literally the shadow. It's even like a nice, I don't know, has anyone ever read Plato, like Plato's Cave? Where the idea is, if you don't know anything about what's going on, you just live in a world where all you're really seeing is shadows, but you don't know they're just the shadows because you've never seen the real thing. So this is also implying, there's also a sort of darker side to this, which is well, unless you've seen the real thing, you're just living in a shadow world where you just, you have fake diamonds, or you all have the cheap diamonds, or something like that. And then here would be the real thing, not just the shadow. So it's both the idea and then even the degraded version. It's like both the ideal and also the possibility that, well, you just have a plastic ring, or something like that. Just the sort of just the reflection or something.
I'm not sure about the generation thing, but culturally in Korean context, even after you get married, you don't have to wear your wedding ring or any type of ring, to show that you are married. So I don't wear rings because I don't feel comfortable wearing rings in many cases. But when I was in the United States, people.
Everybody wears a ring all the time.
Yeah, so they
No, it's true.
had this suspect me whether I'm a single or divorced. I was divorced or something.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's true. In the United States, people never take their wedding rings off. They wear them. If you're playing basketball, you're playing a sport or something where you actually hurt somebody with it, and people take them off or something like that. But yeah, very rarely. And many people can't take them off. Because 25 years after, they're no longer as thin as they once were, and they literally can't take the rings off. It's like you'd have to cut their finger off or cut the ring off or something. You can't physically. It's like your body is grown around the ring. Can't physically be pulled off. But that's another. Yeah, that's sort of the weird appendage. Sorry, we get.
As you, in the case that you had the difficulty to read the small letters behind below the photo, and I think it is as the image of the importance or significance of photo more than the letter.
Right. Yeah, the caption is almost invisible. It's like. There's also, in a way, right, you don't need anything in the picture. All you need is the name. Tiffany & Company. It's like Nike, Apple. You don't really, it's such an iconic brand. You know what it's for. You know what it all means. It's like almost like there's a sense in which everything else in the ad is almost kind of extraneous in a certain way. All right, one more. Let's do one more. Anyone? These are good. I like these. These are cool. Yeah.
Well, I brought a celebrity's picture, like Greta Garbo. It's not classic picture like Greta Garbo, but I thought it was really interesting and also provocative.
Okay.
So,
You want to show us on the internet?
yeah.
Show us what celebrity was.
It is kind of provocative, actually.
Now we have a big going like going to be provocative here, right? Yeah, the expectations are high.
This is not advertisement, it's a picture of a Korean celebrity.
Huffington Post exists in Korea? You guys read this? I really didn't know that.
Yeah, these are pictures of, she was a former K-pop girl group like the one that Youngjin showed, and she deserted the group and she declaimed her solo. What to say?
I thought it's like a Greek tragedy, you know, it's like, and then he renounced the polis and went off to the other thieves, and then the serpent said, hey, what? She renounced the group, I love it. Okay, wait, so wait, which one do you want us to do, that one?
Well, I thought these are sharing like similar themes, so
Okay, okay.
maybe
All right.
the first one.
All right, so tell us about it. If you want.
Well, I thought it was really interesting because, well, lots of Korean girl group should show their.
What's the matter?
I was reading the other section.
I was not. Go on. I'm blissfully unaware of whatever it says. Don't know, I have any idea. Sorry, go on. Ignore them.
So really, what is really interesting is her countenance and the texture of the picture and the color. And she was really famous for his fair skin and bright smile, something like that. But after a while, she was accused by her negligent performance and unwillingness to perform her vital girl image. So after
So
that,
she was lazy, or?
maybe she was accused for dating with older men than herself. So it was kind of
Accused by the press or accused by her partners?
both the press and
the other people in the group?
people.
Uh-huh.
So what I think is, like, after she was deserted from the group and she kind of directly gazing the lens, and I think she violently collaborated with the photographer, and she doesn't just expose the whole naked of it, but she exposed some part of her skin. So I thought there is as I said before, I thought there was a myth of girl image in our Korean pop culture, and in Korean pop culture, girls should be showed like immaculate and bright and pure smile, but she doesn't smile anymore. And also, but she knows that she was consumed by her baby-like image, so I thought it was kind of ambiguous picture. So, and also, if we saw the picture next of it, everything of her posture and are like blurred, but her eyes are really twinkled, but it doesn't reflect anything, but it saws directly to the lens. So I thought maybe she knows that she was consumed by her girl image, and it might be she knows that she was consumed by her sexual image of the girl fantasy, but also she actively accept it and kind of show the provocative image that if you want to consume that, then try that or something like that.
Okay, so she's playing with the, like, almost the accusation of the provocativeness, that she's almost like,
Yeah, I thought that, so I thought it was really
Yeah.
interesting, and you could just interpret this sort of a girl fantasy from the picture.
yeah. Other comments about this image? Isn't the posture very odd here?
Yeah.
It doesn't look comfortable, but I mean, it's not even like some sort of slinky contortion, right? It almost looks actively like you're in a yoga pose or something, doesn't it? No, seriously, look at the way her hand is, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, and if we saw the comment below, which she directly commented, she
Yeah.
said, "This picture seems like I don't have arm."
That's right. No, but it's also just the way she's turned, I mean, it's almost like, it doesn't have a sense of repose at all. It looks like you just somehow see the contortion almost. It's not like, it doesn't look casual, but it doesn't even look like well organized. Other comments?
I think it shows the body curves and in the picture very accurately, and I think there's something sexual about her gazing into the camera.
Right, I mean, that would be a question, why, how is her gaze different from, I mean, that gaze? I mean, they're very different gazes. Maybe it's not even fair to compare, but I mean, she's not looking into the camera there. Here she is. This sequence. And it's weird, it's shot again from further back. All right, what do we do with these? Now she has a glass of water. She drinks.
That is similar to the concept of IU. IU, this famous girl singer-songwriter.
Uh-huh.
Kind of girlish but sexy. And actually, I really hate to say that, but Lolita complex, similar to, yeah, because it's very appealing to men.
What is, I mean, I don't know the answer, I mean, maybe don't know the answer, like, is the, I mean, like, I mean, is this a Lolita figure? What, I mean, I don't know, how,
She's too young and
Yeah.
immature.
yeah.
But but anyway, she shows her skin and
It's highly sexualized, no question. Yeah.
it's hard to explain. But
No, no, no.
What I found really interesting is, as she told before, recently lots of Korean girls who was consumed since they were teenagers, they're now after the 20, and they know they were the object of the sexual gazing. So they just, from my point of view, they just actively accept that kind of sexualized image, and they just kind of show that Lolita gazing actively. So I thought it was really recent movement in Korean culture.
it's very problematic actually, because
also
no one
problematic.
criticized that. They just
Nobody criticizes the Lolita thing.
Lolita thing, and there are many people who don't know actually whether they are sexy or something. But I think it's very regional fetishism, local fetishism to Korean or East Asian countries, because I think in European American country that kind of sexism doesn't appeal.
Oh, so you're saying that you're saying in Korea, like, the youth is valorized. Like, if this was the equivalent in the United States, you're saying the girl would be 5 or 8 years older. Is that what you're saying? You're saying the valorization here is younger.
Teenager
Yeah.
and to 20.
Also, the thing I thought interesting is people generally accuse the girl that accept that kind of sexual image, but they never accuse that kind of industry or the main consumers, mainly men. So
Right.
I thought it was really problematic too.
But from those pictures themselves, and especially the caption,
What is the caption? What does it say?
that, you know,
Yeah, they
translate. What is it? 나보고 웃으라고. How can you translate that? It's just smile at me or 나보고 웃으라고. It's like
Look at me to smile.
imperative. Why don't you smile at me? So she wrote it herself. That means she seems to be
Okay, that's very
playing,
good. Hold on.
yeah, very provocative.
Why don't
yeah.
you smile at me? Because
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
like in the United States, the sort of archetypal thing, the sexist thing would be if a man walks by a girl on the street and says, "Why don't you smile? Like, smile, honey, don't frown." As in, and that's like a classic sexist thing in the United States. It's like you tell a girl, some stranger, you tell some girl, smile. The implication would be, oh, you look prettier or something like that if you smile. And I actually know people, I have friends, like one friend actually once hit somebody with a book when they said that to her. And someone was like, "Why don't you smile?" He's like, smashed him. And there was like a policeman standing there, and he said, "Yeah, good job." And she walked on. But but it's the reverse. It's not, "Why are you smiling at me?" It's like, "Oh, you should be smiling, honey," or something like that. It's like, that's like an archetypal sexist gesture in the United States.
And her direct gaze and the caption, so she seems to be
So you're saying she's participating in this.
Yes.
Now,
Or
your question was,
or resisting.
but your question was whether, I thought you were asking, is she participating in this in a way that actually she reasserts a certain kind of authority over and against the objectification, or you weren't saying that?
Well, I think she doesn't know the notion of objectification, but she just consumed that, like, even though it is sexualized objectification, she just thinks that is her charming point or something like that. So, because she was just naturally consumed by that image since her teenage years. So
I still find the drink really bizarre. It just seems so random. It's like I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but like, so here she is in these sort of provocative poses, showing her skin, showing more skin, and then I got a drink. And then it's not just one; it's the second thing. Then she takes a sip of the water. What is that doing? And of course, she's not looking at the glass. I have the idea she's going to spill it. But she never. Her gaze is still on the camera, but she's like, "Watch! I'll take the drink while I drink from the camera."
maybe the fresh, clean image and it can be juxtaposed to her fresh, young, flowery.
But water isn't flowery. It's transparent. I mean, part of what's weird, it's also the cup is transparent, the water is transparent. It's not, if it was a classic, a blue glass or something, it would already be very different. It's all about, like, somehow the transparency. I mean, and that almost seems like a funny comment, like you were saying, like, her skin is so fair, and it's like the makeup, the way it's lit is to make it whiter and whiter. And then somehow the glass goes, it's like you could see right through the glass and see her chin. You know, it's about a certain kind of, you can see through the glass there and see her lips. It's like highlighting, in that case, highlighting sort of the red of her lips, but against the predominant sort of paleness of everything around her.
I think there is a discrepancy that how she wears is very comfortable and casual, but her posture to drink a water lying on the floor is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it. You would just spill it down your chin. You'd be like this. You'd be like, you would just get water all over the ground. It would not look cool either. It's like, no one would say, "Wow, you're drinking that water so sexily." It's like, why are you spilling it everywhere? But that's almost the improbable. Like, you insert this it could be anything, right? I mean, in this case, I think the transparency is important, but you could imagine her, like, I don't know, sharpening a pencil or something weird, like, what happens next? It's just like completely.
there may be many different ways of reading her pictures. Maybe she's using her Lolita image herself, but not reading her, these pictures, especially in considering the circumstances and criticism surrounding her, that she seems to be herself. She seems to be making use of that media's portrayal of herself as object, but she seems to be responding to that, resisting to that, and it seems to have written those comments there.
So you're saying she's actively resisting?
That's what I'm saying, that maybe totally, maybe different opinions about that.
I think she's enjoying the voyeurism of other people's things.
I agree. And Instagram is all about self-promotion, right? And somehow selling yourself and appearing attractive to other people.
Yeah, Instagram is a weird thing. I mean, the weird thing about Instagram, right, you can search by, some hashtags, right? They're the weirdest things in the world. Like there's so many weird, strange, like sub-things, that they'll make it. It's very bizarre. I'm sort of afraid of Instagram. I don't like to look at it. It's kind of disturbing. Like I have an Instagram account and I don't follow anybody. And so I don't ever look at it. But if I do, it always tells me, here are some people you might want to follow. And I cannot for the life of me figure out by what principle. Because I don't post anything, so how do they know what I would, they may know because they know who I know on Facebook, these things are all network, but like they just always tell me follow these random people and I'm just like, no. But I'm somehow resistant. But the only reason I go is to look and see what weird suggestions they make. I'm not a very vibrant Instagram user. Putting her away. We'll wash our hands of this. Let's look very quickly at in this surface reading thing, at page 11 and 12. And they kind of just go through a bunch of just sort of little descriptions that I think are maybe just useful to think about. They're not like absolute categories or something like that, but they have sort of a heuristic value. In this first one they describe, they're saying, what do we mean by paying attention to the surface? Actually, go back, there's more of them, I'm going too fast. Go back to 9. So they're kind of now, I don't think the word surface matters so much, but they're just going to kind of give a list of different approaches you can take to texts. And I think it's worth reading through these and just thinking a little bit about how they make these distinctions and why. They're kind of instructive. So first one is studying materiality. And they say that emerges in history of the book and in so-called cognitive reading. So the history of the book, there's a lot of research people are doing, or have done for a long time now, about editions of books, how they're organized, how they're edited, literally how things are put out on the page, fonts, arrangement, every kind of what you might think of as ornamental, but depending on the book, can potentially be things that actually have a lot of implications. And that's one sense of sort of studying the surface. A little bit like with Emily Dickinson. If you look in that Cameron thing, it shows the mimeographs of the actual manuscript pages. And I said, you can go online and actually go to these websites and they'll have the pages and you can blow them up to, super magnified and see every little trace of her handwriting or something like that. Then there are people who are also doing the so-called cognitive studies of literature, where they actually do brain scans while people are reading. This stuff is largely in a very, very primitive state. They really don't know. Linguists and cognitive scientists have been trying to do this a lot with language acquisition, but they really have there's very little you can learn about reading at the moment from these things. Now, who knows? Technology changes quickly, but as far as I know, this kind of stuff is not exactly producing exciting results. Then they call this as just analyzing the verbal structure. Again, this in many ways is just doing what the new critics did. Right? I mean, in a sense, they're saying, you're just analyzing the features of the language. In that sense, they're almost saying that, like, new criticism in a certain way could be a kind of surface reading. Because you're not asking, now, there's other aspects, but that's at least potentially a thought. Not sure effective and ethical is used. Let's skip effective and ethical. I don't think it's instructive for our purposes. On 11, assuming texts can reveal their own truths. And this is something like close to what Demond does. In other words, Demond doesn't say that I, the interpreter, swoop in and show how everything works. Demond claims to be describing how the text itself is doing all this. So Demond doesn't say, I'm telling you a story about the relationship between the literal and metaphorical. Demond says, the text tells us a story about the relationship. And in fact, one of the attacks that people often make, they don't like about people like Demond, is they say, Demond talks about a text that almost sounds like it's an entity or an organization or a human being that's doing all this stuff. But part of his argument is simply he's saying, I'm not bringing anything to the text, I'm simply describing what's going on in there. And I think so it's a funny way in which a lot of these critics, like, at the moment when people accuse them of importing a lot of stuff, they will respond by saying, no, I'm just describing what's going on. I'm not bringing, I'm not importing all these things. So in a funny way, at some moment in their career, they all claim to be doing just description. At a funny moment in their careers, they all claim to be doing, it's not like these are exclusive labels to anybody. It's like these are things you invoke at a certain moment in the argument or something like that. Then you can do patterns within text, across text. We'll talk about that more in a second. But anyway, those are just some various categories. Now, what we're going to do tomorrow, I just want to sort of give us a little bit of a preview. It's our last day. What I wanted us to do is, what I want you to read is from this text by Gertrude Stein called Tender Buttons. You do not have to read the whole thing. But if you look at it, you just open it, you'll see it's divided into these sort of general sections. The first one is called objects. And then each of these is this little subsection. And you will see that her language is very, very odd. So I recommend that we just talk about the first section, so-called objects, which just goes to page 17. The next one is food. If you get into it, you can keep reading. The next one is like roast beef, and it goes on and on. But let's start provisionally with the first 17 pages. And what you will notice, and this is partly what we're interested in, you will notice that at the level of the word, at every level, there are weird complications. So there are going to be individual words that require some sort of interpretive attention, where there are going to be sentences where the syntax and the grammar is bizarre, and one's going to have to make all sorts of decisions about how you'd even scan them as sentences. They begin with a capital letter, end with a period, but are there even sentences? That's going to be a question. Then there's going to be complications at the level of the sort of subgrouping. The first one's called a carafe that's blind, the second glaze. There's going to be complications about what the title means, how the title relates to the little section. And then there's going to be complications across the little subsection. In other words, they're all in a thing called objects. They're big over-labeled. They're all grouped together. There are some resemblances between them. But part of the question is going to be, how does reading one of them help you read the next one? Or how does reading them all together change what it would mean to just read one alone? And the answer is that, part of the provocation of the way she writes this stuff is that the answers to those questions are not that easy. Okay? And so, while you're reading, again, it's only 17 pages, they're bizarre. While you're reading them, I want you to be thinking of I don't know what to call it, strategies or ways of possibly making sense of this collection that might not be the most self-evident. In other words, for example, you could, instead of reading them just linearly, or after you've read them once linearly, you could try going back and looking at all the instances of a particular word. Just